of course, is English. That's just native to here. But then in Buckingham, we have a Tesco, a Lidl, and an Aldi, both of which, Lidl and Aldi, are German. So, yes, hello, my name is Luka. I study business management in the University of Buckingham, and I'm currently in the first year.
Would you like to say your hometown?
Yes, I'm from Prien am Chiemsee in Germany.
Okay, so that would make you an international student.
Yes,
Can
EU.
you tell us about the International Student Podcast?
The International Student Podcast. It's a podcast I set up in order to make myself better at speaking, better at hosting, as well as to give students a voice in the process. Because during quarantine, there's a lot of surge of creativity and inspiration, right? You kind of get ideas. And I realized that especially in this situation, a lot of students were lacking a voice in specific scenarios, especially when it comes towards education. So I figured I'd set up a podcast, and it's my online platform now, which gives students that voice and puts them on a bigger platform, which kind of puts them on the map in special issues.
Okay. Could you run us the course you're taking?
Yes, I'm taking business management as a bachelor.
Why did you choose your course?
The thing is, business management is kind of frowned upon amongst a lot of courses in university because it's not necessarily a prestigious course as many people see it. But I always saw it as it's a very broad field. Business in itself it's very broad. And I want to go into real estate at the very end. So I don't necessarily need a degree, but I needed broad experience. And business is exactly what I needed, broad experience, because it teaches you about all the different sectors like HR, marketing, finance. You go into everything a little bit, but not necessarily in depth. So you get a lot of everything. Yeah.
So you just finished your first year.
Yes, exactly.
What have you thought of your course?
So far it's exactly what I expected, right? I expected, like I just said, this broad field of everything. And I came to Buckingham specifically because of the small class sizes. And that is something that really elevated the experience of my course and made the entire experience of business management in itself a lot better. Because I know a lot of my friends have business courses with auditoriums of like 2,000 people, and they're not quite getting the business experience, because in business, you need to learn about people. And if you don't interact with a lot of people, you just sit with a lot of people, you don't get that experience that you should be looking for.
Why did you choose to study your course in the UK and not in Germany?
Well, in most countries, either you get the most fun education in America because of the college experience of 4 years, or you get the best education in England. That's kind of like the idea that everything carries, because you can get good education. And there's a lot of highly ranked universities outside of those two countries, right? But any international student that I know from international schools connects England or America with the top education.
Okay. So in Germany, so in the UK, we would have A-levels/subjects. How does Germany work for applying for university? Obviously, you wouldn't have A-levels because you didn't study in the UK. So how would it work coming from Germany?
Yeah, so from Germany, I took IB, which is the International Baccalaureate, which is an international, it's an international organization that operates all around the world, in America, even the UK. And so you get like a universal certificate that works for just about everywhere. But then in Germany specifically, there's Abitur, which is kind of the A-level equivalent of Germany. It's just, taken over basically. And so same sort of assessment style, but it gets converted, obviously. And sometimes the conversion is a lot more generous than it should be, and sometimes it's a lot harsher than it should be, especially what I experienced from the IB. Like IB to A-level conversions are pretty harsh sometimes.
What do you think the best A-level, so Germany equivalent A-level/slash subjects are for your course?
The best German. I can only list from IB perspective, right? Because that's the baccalaureate I did. But in essence, it is just a similar diploma. You can weigh it all equally, just like the A-levels. And I studied business management, which was great because in high school, I already got the 2 years of business management in. Now I'm doing a 2-year degree in business management. So I have a very good foundation set. So that's highly recommendable. Anything with speaking, interacting, and networking is highly recommended. So I did theater as well, which once again, a very controversial course because not many people associate theater with necessary intelligence, but it is a very there's a lot of interactment, I'm failing to see the word here.
Interacting.
Interacting. There we go. Interacting. Yes. There's a lot of interacting and just a lot of socializing and getting to present yourself with confidence. And I think that's a very essential aspect, and that's helped me so far, especially because I want to ultimately go into sales, where you need a lot of confidence.
Could you remind us of the university you're currently studying at?
Yes, it's the University of Buckingham in Buckingham.
So far, what has been the worst and best things about studying at the University of Buckingham? Starting off with the worst.
Yeah, I mean, the worst thing is something a lot of people would know if they know Buckingham or the general area. It's small. It is an incredibly tiny town of 12,000 people, 3,000 of which are university students. So, I mean, you kind of get to see that the large population is university students, which means the town is very accepting of students. There's a lot of job opportunities like at Tesco, Sainsbury's, yada, 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 all of that. But it is very small. A lot of people love that. That's why they come to Buckingham exclusively, because you focus on your studies. You cannot get distracted as you would in London or elsewhere. And yeah, so that's definitely the worst thing for me. But like I said, a lot of the students that came here appreciated for that. And that's what they wanted. I just made the mistake. That's something I can recommend. Go visit your university, or at least really look up the place where you're going to go. Because I like the teaching style. I like that it has small class sizes. That's good about the university. But I never checked out the location, and that was a mistake on my part, because I like big cities.
Anything else bad about the university, or is that it's pretty much just the size of it?
It's the thing is, it's not even the size. I love the size of it, but I hate the size of Buckingham itself. It's the town itself is too small for me, but the university, 3,000 people, perfect size. You know just about everybody that you see around campus. Like anybody who goes out, you've seen at least once, and you know their name, which is really friendly, and that's the kind of environment I kind of wanted to go into.
And the best. So you kind of mentioned the best things already. Is there anything else you would like to mention for the best things about studying?
I mean, it's also best and worst. For me, that's the best thing because it's a 2-year degree, right? I'm studying business management, a usual 3-year degree, but they compress it, they take a little bit of holiday away, and instead you finish in 2 years. So that's something that I really wanted in the early years when I applied here. That's something I now learned to not appreciate, because I actually want to stay in university a little bit longer and get that additional year, because, you know, you meet a lot of people, you have fun. But yeah, that is basically the best aspect. Small teaching groups and 2-year degree, which is a really nice thing.
If we go into the Buckingham accommodation, where did you stay in your first year?
I stayed in Verney Park, which is a separate building. It's about 15 minutes away from the actual university, because while Buckingham isn't largely populated, it's still kind of, I mean, big. And yeah, it's kind of separate. There's a housing complex. It's 4 different buildings, all look exactly the same, and they're all university accommodation. And I stayed there.
What did you think about living there? Did you have, how many flatmates did you have? What was the kitchen like? Was the catering there? No catering? What was it like living there?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really nice experience. I've moved out now, but there's 4 different houses in Verney Park. Like I said, they're all set up in like a circle. There's Polly House, Bateman House, Harris House, and Kane House. And they all have very different setups. Like Polly House, for example, had a double bed, but no ensuite. Then Bateman had just a single bed and no ensuite. Harris has en suites, also single beds, and then Kane has a little bit more space and also single beds. And that was a big thing that I didn't think I would care about, because there are 15 there's 15 people on your side, and then there's 7 people on your side, then there's a kitchen in the middle, and then there's 7 people on the other side of the level.
So 14 in all?
Yes, exactly.
For one kitchen?
Yes. But it is a very large and generous kitchen. There's a giant counter in the middle, and then there's 2 stoves and 4 ovens, like arranged like on the side. So big countertop in the middle, you can walk around the entire thing, and that's kind of where you do your cutting, and all the microwaves and stuff in the center. And then around it is the stove area and like the sitting and eating area.
Okay. What do you think? Oh, sorry, carry on.
I mean, yeah, no, that in itself was nice, but it used to be cleaned on a daily basis, every weekday, but now it's only 3 times because of coronavirus, but that's due to change. So, yeah.
What do you think the best Buckingham accommodation is?
Best Buckingham accommodation is probably private, but if we go in school, I think that would be Sunley House, because it is it has an ensuite. It's a silent accommodation. So you can go to your friends' houses to party, and then there you will always have quiet study space. Every time you want to be alone, you can be alone in your accommodation. And it's very new. It's a renovated building, and it just looks a lot more clean than the other ones.
If we go into the Buckingham area, we briefly talked about it earlier, but could you tell us about the Buckingham nightlife?
Well, Buckingham nightlife is heavily just based on what the university is offering, because we have our university bar. It's called the OTM. where we have like a cafeteria touch to it and the night of parties turns into a club space. So we have parties every Wednesday and Fridays at the university, and that is the only party you will find in Buckingham unless it's a house party. And that is okay. I mean, the bar prides itself in having the cheapest pint in Buckingham, so it's well accommodating for students and drinks, but you should have pre-drinks before, which is welcome, but started to become banned by security at some point. After 10 o'clock, you have to leave your accommodation from pre's. So if that doesn't change, that is kind of meh. But yeah, nightlife is okay, just because they transform the bar into like an actual party area. And when societies host a party, they are forced to decorate to a certain level. Otherwise, they get fined and get to collect less of a fee for entrance. So there's a kind of standard that they have to adhere to.
Compared to Germany, what is the shops and food variety like? Is there a lot compared to Germany? A little? Have you got your usual shops? Does it feel like you're in Germany with the shops going around, or is it a completely different experience?
That's very interesting, actually, because Tesco, of course, is English. That's just native to here. But then in Buckingham, we have a Tesco, a Lidl, and an Aldi, both of which, Lidl and Aldi, are German. So that was very helpful when those were here because, of course, I kind of knew where I was headed. I mean, now I only go to Tesco because it's kind of, they have a bigger variety in England specifically. But yeah, it's also, you notice a lot of things like there's a lot of different kinds of food. Like there's more snacks here, more instant food, like meal deals and something like that. That isn't a thing in Germany, or I haven't seen it in any other country surrounding Germany either. And yeah, that was really cool because, of course, as a uni student, that's exactly what you want. You want instant food, you want meal deals, because if you're ever on the go to a lecture, you can just grab a sandwich and a drink and a snack, and that's it. So I think it's a lot better than I expected it to be, but also it's yeah, no, it's pretty good actually. And the meat selection is really nice because you have a lot of there's a lot of pride in the stores about sourced 100% British beef. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of cool because then you have a larger selection and it is all pretty organic in a way. It's nice.
What general advice would you give to German students wanting to study in the UK?
German students. The thing is, I only really know a lot of international experience, right? Because I learned English from a very young age. So of course I'd recommend learn English to a certain standard. But then also, I don't think that's the main thing to focus on. I think the main thing to focus on is orientate yourself around the cultural differences. Like, for example, what will you find in stores? If you were just raised in Germany, what will you be able to find in stores that you weren't able to find at home, or vice versa? And kind of get to know the culture a little bit, get to know even up until ranging the drinking culture, right? And the learning culture, because it is widely different. Even though there are a lot of international students in universities tend to adhere to a learning structure that is very English, because of course you went to England for that structure. But get to know that first, really learn the culture. That's something I experienced from the very young age, right? Because I was brought up with English people and people all around the world. So that wasn't really a struggle for me because I already know exactly what culture I'm entering and I really like it. But people who were raised exclusively in Germany might not like that learning culture as much.
What advice would you give to students wanting to study at Buckingham University?
At what?
Buckingham University.
Specifically Buckingham.
Specifically Buckingham.
Specifically Buckingham. Well, I'd say it's nice if you wish to return home. And that's because it is an accelerated course, right? You get through it a lot quicker. And if you want to go to England to stick out when you go back to Germany, right? You want to stand out because you got an English education, which is not something many people got in Germany. So you stand out. Your CV immediately stands out as soon as you see that there's an English university on there. And if you want to come here for the experience and the diploma, then of course an accelerated course is very welcome because one, you get to apply everywhere in Germany with an English university and a year before everybody else who graduated off your class. So you're a little bit ahead of an experience and you're also significantly standing out because yeah, you attended outside of Germany.
Finally, what advice would you give to students wanting to study your course?
My course. Don't expect too much. Business management, I always thought, is a course where you will require a master's to ultimately stand out, unless you want to pursue a career that doesn't necessarily need a degree, like, for example, real estate. I don't need it. For me, this is making me stand out already. But for people who actively want to stand out and want to ultimately pursue a role as a manager or CEO of a higher position, they will need a master's to ultimately stand out, because while the degree offers a lot of broad topics, it offers nothing specifically. So if you want to go into accounting, obviously study accounting or do a master's in accounting after you've done your bachelor in business management. So kind of be prepared to extend your knowledge a little bit further and do that extra year again.
You chose coming to the UK to study over an apprenticeship, so going right into work, maybe in the UK or Germany. What path you to make this choice?
The thing is, in Germany, an apprenticeship, or at least where I grew up in like an international school setting, an apprenticeship was never suggested. That wasn't a thing I heard of really up until, like, an internship was always a thing, right? Gathering experience, but an apprenticeship going directly into a kind of work and kind of learning and evolving from there was never something that was really brought up in my upbringing. That's nothing I ever had to confront. And that's something that you've mentioned before when we had a private conversation. And I never thought of that before, because that was never brought up to me before. So I was never encountered with the choice. So I couldn't decide. I was always just university or nothing. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So could you tell us more about your podcast?
Yes. So my podcast, because I don't want to bore people, right? I want to give students information, but also entertain them to a fire. So in my podcast, I very much encourage tangents. So if we start talking about a course, for example, I want to drift off to the last holiday you took in November. Like, it's a very much, it's not a linear discussion, although I try to always make it circle back to the ending. And usually naturally it has a tendency to do so anyway. But I like to encourage students to really speak about their experience, not just in the course, but as a student itself. So there's a lot more to student life than just learning. There's also just, because most students are of our age, right? So any student would fall into a teenage age group or like a early 20s age group. And they all want to know what experience other people had at their age, and they can seek inspiration from that. If somebody traveled Europe at the age of 19 as a student in university, that's an experience that I would want to have shared and students to know about, including also why they took the course they did after all the vacationing and I don't know, anything they've done before, so that it all kind of ties together to give a good image of what a student should or would maybe like to do as well.
Okay. At this point, I let students have what I like to call a free-for-all. You can say what you like about what you want. You could give advice. You could tell us your social medias. You could say thank you. You could say more. You could actually summarize everything you spoke about. Literally, the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, of course, I'd like to shout out my podcast. It's at the IS Podcast on Instagram and just about every major platform, including YouTube. And yeah, but otherwise, I like to give a little bit of advice. And I didn't have anything prepared for this now necessarily, but what I encountered recently in quarantine is that while there's a surge of inspiration, there's also a surge of kind of boredom. You start to realize that there isn't enough to do in a day with what you've done so far. You don't have enough activities to actively fill a day, because there was usually always like more talking to your friends, more TikTok or more YouTube. But now we've all reached the point after about 5 months in quarantine where we're exhausting our resources and we don't have anything else to do. Something I'd recommend, especially to students, because that's your main audience, I suppose. Educate yourself as well as entertain yourself in this period. Because what I just did, I never finished a book for the past 5 years. I haven't finished a book. And now in the past week, I finished 2 books. And that is something I never thought I would do, but I just decided to pick it up. And because I was so bored and I've exhausted all my other tasks, I get so bored of YouTube and Netflix at this point, because I've watched it so much over the next 5 months, that this is something that I would have never done before, but suddenly my mind thought of it as entertaining. It suddenly became fun because it was something different. It was something new. So expand your horizons a little bit, reconsider things you hated before, like I hated reading, for example, because maybe your mind has also reached that point of boredom where other things that you hated before are now a lot more interesting. And of course, also, yeah, broaden your horizon, like the reading. It's helped so much over the past week, especially. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'm plugged in.
Amazing. Thank you.